Welcome to episode 138 of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast. I am Stephen Rothberg. I'm the founder of College Recruiter Job Search Site, and I'm pretty interested in today's episode. We've got a guest that I have known for a long time. I'm not going to date either one of us. One of us looks young. The other one is me. But before we get to you, Sarah, why don't we get to you, Peter? Peter, good to see you.
Thanks. Well, I'm Peter Zollman, founder of the AIM Group. We do recruitment, marketplace, consulting, conferences, and content. So that about covers us. Sarah, you're sitting in Boise, Idaho.
I am.
Really beautiful part of the country this time of year. Not necessarily in December, January, February. It's cold, but
after coming from the Midwest of Wisconsin and Chicago, it is gorgeous here in the winters. It's like moving to Arizona.
Well, you can have it. I spent 5.5 years in Buffalo, and that's why I now live in Orlando.
Yes.
So you work with a lot of job boards, recruitment marketplaces, HR tech companies, and one of the things you focus on is, let's back up. Former SVP of SAP.
I know.
And a whole bunch of other HR tech and recruitment software companies. So that said, Strategy Lemon. When life gives you lemons, never mind. Anyway, tell us about people who are saying, I've been at this 18, 20 years, and it's time to find the next person. The premise of this episode is you need 3 things. What are they?
Yeah, I think there's a difference, right? If you're trying to find the next person, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to exit. You're just trying to create a really solid succession plan of who to pass the company on to. I think we're seeing just a really big shift in the market, right? As somebody who has been doing this for literal decades at this point, we're seeing something that we have not seen before. I think the 2010 to 2013 timeline, as we were really bringing in social media and as kind of recruiting always started cloud first. We didn't have to go through a lot of the transformation that we had to go through with other areas of HCM. And so we didn't have as big of an impact the 2005 to 2010 era that core systems did. And so what we're seeing now is very similar to when mobile and social was coming in, but at scale and coming at a ton of fronts. This is not an AI conversation. This is just a complete shift of how we work, how we think about work, how we get jobs, how we think about getting jobs. And more companies are making the decision now to decide what they want to do next, right? Whether that is exiting, whether that is merging, whether that is consolidating, whether that is shifting over to more of a white label type of model, or just kind of letting it run and stepping out and having somebody else step in. So by far the most common conversation I've had for the last 6 months.
Yeah, and I'm definitely seeing very much the same. The conversations that I've had with owners, with leaders, Sarah, seem to be different based on the size of the organization. That to me is like the biggest differentiator. It's not so much the conversations I've had. It's not so much about whether they've been in it for 18 years or 8 years, whether they're profitable, not profitable. It's like small, medium, large. Maybe you can kind of, if you agree, disagree if you want, and if you just kind of like lay that out.
I do disagree. I think what we're seeing that's really interesting is I have a lot of founders that are under 3 years that are actively and intentionally building for acquisition. They have no goal of actually growing and building a company. And that is their goal. I have other ones that are building for IPO, right? Like they are starting from the beginning. They have no interest. They don't want to take VC money. They don't want to do any of these. And then on the flip side of companies that are 5, 8, 10, 20 years in, I'm getting a whole mix. Some people don't want to sell because they want to retain the legacy, but they want to figure out how to step out of the business and still have that legacy continue in other ways. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole group that is just saying we are just kind of done. We see things shifting, we see things going, and we either have to decide, are we completely shifting our product strategy? Are we going to go to market completely differently from a partnership perspective? Or is it time to exit? A lot of conversations with ones that are maybe a little bit larger that I hear is like, hey, we had these offers and we missed it. And I don't want to miss it again, right? I don't want to hold out and miss one more cycle because this industry runs in cycles. And so we have about every 3 to 5 years, we have a big buy cycle time, and then it stops and there's investment cycle, and then there's nothing. And then it goes back to a buy cycle. And we're kind of in this moment of a buy cycle right now.
So 3 things, tick them off and then tell us about them.
Yes. So if you are considering an exit, here are 3 things that you should be thinking about doing. 1, make sure that you actually want to do an exit. And it sounds very remedial, but this is a pretty common mistake a lot of people make. They are kind of uncertain with the direction they want to go because they're like, oh, we'll think about that 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out. You should be thinking about, if that is your plan at any point in the next 5 years, you need to be thinking about it as your strategy today and starting today. The second thing that companies should be doing is what we call kind of a strategic alignment and doing a spot check into how well their organizational health is. A lot of times when we start talking about exit, it's really easy to jump to the financials and all the numbers and the things that side of it wants. What a lot of companies don't realize is people like myself and others are actually hired to come in and do a risk analysis from a go-to-market perspective. Is the product ready? Is there something for the future that is going to be held? Is there a potential for partnership here that maybe isn't being utilized? Do the internal teams align with each other? Are they actually building something that a client wants, or have they fell behind on the market? And so teams that get ready and they do this, whether it's getting ready for investment or getting ready for acquisition, we often will run this so they have a very clear understanding of what needs to be worked on and where direction needs to be done and where things are falling kind of apart internally or where we've seen strategic drift. Often that is most notable because we have a lack of revenue, lower new deals coming in, we're having higher churn, we're not having adoption at the same rates, we're having to spend more money, or deals are taking longer. That typically signals strategy drift. And the third thing that has to get done is making sure you have a really clear understanding of who your targets are. That includes your potential partnerships, that includes potential white labels, that includes understanding where there is white space in the market that maybe you're not thinking about. I think especially as we're coming at it from a recruiting product or a job board perspective, we get really caught on staying in the world of talent acquisition. And sometimes there's money to be made with what we have bought or what we have built in other areas of the market. So for instance, there's times where we've been able to take a talent acquisition product and actually shift it into a learning solution because that's where the market was at and the company needed a very specific exit time window. And so we could do very minor things to do that. And so sometimes it's just really making sure that target list is broad and has a good understanding of what that could mean.
So when you say your targets, you're not referring to your customer targets. You're talking about the targets, the people you want to reach to do your exit, either through acquisition, merger, outright sale, whatever.
And it could be even things that we know that we have to do, right? So we know in order to fill the gap, we actually have to pull back what we have built. One of the big mistakes a lot of companies make is actually overbuilding their product, and they move into too many different areas because, they're trying to just get revenue from wherever they can. And it actually makes them less attractive for an acquisition or an investment. And so sometimes, again, by understanding what those potentials are, so we won't say targets, but potential avenues for exit, potential avenues for acquisition, potential avenues for different type of mergers, whatever that can look like, it's really understanding then, but with each of them, what does that actually mean with what I have already done? And that's where these 3 things really come together really, really clearly. Because then it's like, okay, now we know where we have strategy drift. We know who our partners are. Here's what we need to do to change our product roadmap or just make some minor adjustments. Here's what we need to do with go-to-market that is going to be differently. Here's what we need to do with marketing. A lot of times people in the TA space are not utilizing analyst and influencer relations very well. And so they're not getting into some of the behind the scenes side, which is what helps with a lot of deal flow in this space.
Interesting. So you mentioned a minute ago about some of the risk assessment, I think, was the phrase that you used. And what that caused me to infer was that your work is on the buy side, that you're representing or advising the buyers of these companies. Do you also work on the sell side? I mean, if there's a listener who's like, what she's saying makes sense. I really like the way her approach is. I wonder if I can retain her and she can help me sell my company. Is that a thing, or is that like, no, I'll contact you. I might be interested in buying you, but I'm not the person to help you sell.
So it is kind of, right?
Okay.
So I am not a buyer agent. I don't represent companies going through the sales process outside of advisory, but I do have a number of buyer agents, which you have to be. There are some people that function in the space that are not licensed buyer agents. And so I think this is a really big misunderstanding. You do have to have a federal certification to be a buyer's agent. And there's a whole set of laws and rules and regulations around that. And so my work on the seller side is typically I've walked through many acquisitions with them, but you do have an agent that actually is going in and doing all of that. Where I'm often coming in on the seller side is, let's make sure that we really have the strategic clarity and we have everything set up and ready. And that is true whether you are wanting to do an exit, whether you are just wanting to increase revenue, whether you are wanting to lose churn, whatever you're looking to do. I do have clients. I have sat on the other side. I've done about $3.5 or $4 billion of acquisitions in roles on the buy side, and as well as supporting the sell side. I've had 2 exits as my own in this industry, 4 total as a founder, all bootstrapped, no investment on any of them. And so I've been on both sides of this, but I think we call it a strategic lemon review or a lemon strategy review. What this actually is doing is just doing an organizational check. And a lot of times this helps you make sure you are fully ready. And again, this is not just for an exit. We do these also for and it's not done outside of everything else, especially like a lot of people have fractional strategy, fractional CMOs, they have teams, they have all of that. It's not designed to replace any of those. It's just to give a third-party assessment and a really clean perspective, typically delivered in under 30 days. So it's a very quick, easy turnaround, not designed to be in there forever, for your team to be able to have an honest assessment of what they need to work on.
It appears we have used up our time. So, Stephen, you got one last 10-second question, or you want to just say, let's wrap it up here?
Yeah, no, I definitely.
Sarah's contact information to put up on the screen.
Yeah, I'll throw that up right here. I think the one thing that we didn't really touch on, but I think is sort of like implicit in all of this, is, for God's sake, get good advice. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Lawyers, accountants, advisors. I've had friends who exited and did incredibly well, and I've had friends who didn't.
Yeah.
And one of the key differentiators that I see is that those who exited well tended to have very good advice. And a friend of mine went through a nightmare went all the way to the closing line with Apple years ago, and an executive walks in and basically says, we're going to give you 10% of what we were offering, and the offer is off the table when you walk out the door. And purchase agreement should have been written differently.
Yeah.
But anyway, Yeah.
And I think the other thing just to keep in mind, most companies have a board of advisors. They have a board, they have customer advisors. The people that are typically consulting on some of these things and giving you really good advice on these things are not the same ones that necessarily understand how to do it if your goal is an investment or an exit. There are small tweaks and twists that have to be done for exit readiness. And ideally, we are starting 18 to 24 months ahead of when your goal is. And so you can do it shorter term, but if you have a 24 to 36 timeline to actually get things going, that's when you really have the best exit opportunity and bringing in the right people at the right time. But definitely within the TA and the HR tech space, I do find, especially now, there's a lot of people doing advisory on a lot of things that are very, very good at a specific part and are kind of being drifted over into other areas.
Sure. Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank
you guys so much.
Have a good one. See you at HR Tech, probably.
Yes, absolutely. I will see you there.
Cheers.
Take care.